In this tutorial, we will have a look how we can use inheritance of script, basically classes, to use this enemy attack and patrol. I hope you get the idea. So we're gonna do this, and all of the link of this sprite gonna be in the description. You can go and check that out. And I want to thanks Patreon supporter Draken and Michelle. I really apologize if I am just spelling or pronouncing pronouncing your name wrong. I'm really sorry for that, but thank you so much, guys. It's helped me a lot to keep me making videos for you guys. Okay, so without furthering delay, let's get into this topic, how we can just do this. Let's get into or dive into this. As you can see, I have enemy right over here, and if I just click on this play button in the top, this enemy just gonna patrol around this ground. So what we want to inherit. I already have created a enemy script, so before we do that, let's have a look what we're doing inside that script. So as you can see, enemy just patrolling around in this ground. So once the enemy is right over here at the end of this ground, it's gonna flip to the right direction. As you can see, indeed it's doing. So I'm gonna get out of play mode, and if we just select this enemy game object, as you can see, I have attached a enemy script. And if I just double click that on it, we have this update function. As you can see, update function, start function, and all of these things right over here. Let's suppose we just want to reuse this update function and all of these things. So what we can do, we can go to Unity, and we can just right click on this enemy script and just remove this component. Basically we just removing this enemy component. Instead we're gonna create another script, and that script just gonna inherit from this enemy script. Basically it's gonna take all of the properties of this enemy script. So let's have a look. So I'm gonna create another script, something like enemy 2. To do so, let's go to project tab, assets, and then script. You can just right click on these assets, then create C# script, name it to something like enemy 2. I already have created. If I go to script folder, as you can see, I have it over here. So I'm going to select this enemy game object, and let's select that script and drag it to add component section. As you can see, enemy 2 script doesn't have any attack point or any kind of speed like that. So what we want, this script just gonna inherit from that enemy script. Basically this script just gonna take all of the properties of that enemy script. To do so, we're gonna double click this enemy script. As you can see, this script just is deriving from mono behavior. Basically if we just remove this mono behavior, we're not gonna able to this start function and update function. So what we gonna do, instead of deriving from mono behavior, we're gonna derive from our enemy. So we can take all of the properties of our enemy class. So that's why we're gonna type right over here enemy. So now this class or this script just gonna take all of the properties of our enemy, something like this work speed, bool parameter, all of these things. So if I just move to enemy 2 script and control s to save your code, and we have done nothing, as you can see. And we can just remove this start and update function, we don't need it. So as you can see, we have nothing at all in this enemy 2 script. But if we just save it and go back to Unity, we're gonna see all the properties uh, just gonna pop up underneath our enemy 2 script. Why? Because we inheriting, basically that enemy class or that script is just parent, and we just inheriting from parent. Basically we just taking properties. As you can see, indeed we have all of the something like this work speed, facing right, all of these things. Even we have done nothing in this enemy 2 script, but we deriving from enemy script. So that's why we taking all of the properties of enemy script. And what we want to do, we're going to go to parent class, or basically the enemy class or the parent class, you can say. And what we want to do, before we do that, let's go to Unity. and make sure you just drag the detect point to detect point fill, and ground layer I'm gonna choose ground, and for this distance I'm gonna choose something like 1, and it's gonna work out okay as it's basically it's doing before. So it's gonna work out as same as like before he just doing. And make sure you just go to overrides and click on apply all, so the changes will be saved into that prefab of this enemy game object. So let's click on this play button. So this enemy just gonna patrol around this ground. I hope you get the idea of inheritance. Basically, we just take properties, function, all of the things that we need, and it's working fine as it was doing before, as this was doing before. So as you can see, it just get flips and walking around. I hope you get the idea. And what we want to do, I'm going to go to parent one, not the sub one. So let's double click that. So this is our the inheriting class or inherit class, as you can see. So let's go to this enemy class, basically the parent class where we inheriting, and we will create a function for keeping track of basically if this player game object, something this player game object get close enough or of this attack range of this enemy, then what we have to do, we need to stop moving. Instead we need to just attack on this player game object. So that is the thing. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna go to parent one, not the child one. Make sure basically parent class, enemy class. So we will make a public, make sure you just making it public so you can use this variable one more time to these enemy to script as well. So that is the thing. So we're gonna go over there, and that will be bull, and we can call this something like in range, in range, in range. And by default I'm gonna set this one to fall, or we can leave it like this. And what we're gonna do, we're gonna go right over here. As you can see, we just moving our right over here, basically this line of code right over here, just moving our enemy left and right. And this one just taking if we are grounded or not. If it's not, then we just flipping our character. So what we will do, so basically if we move to unity, we just want to create a circle around this enemy game object. And if this player game object collide with that circle, then this enemy should stop working. So basically that is the thing. So we just want to create the circle. To do so, let's go to script one more time. And what we're gonna do to create a circle, we do know we're gonna use this physics 2d dot overlap circle. And this function right over here as a first argument will take the position from where we want to create the circle. So we will pass transform dot position. Basically transform dot position means right over here the current position of enemy or the center position of enemy. Basically this we just moving over to this transform then position. And the second thing, it will take the radius. So let's make a radius variable. Let's make a public float, and we can call this something like attack radius. So let's call this one attack radius. And by default I'm gonna set it to something like 4f. It's totally up to you how much you want to set, and you can just leave it like that, and later on you can just adjust this one through inspector. So I'm gonna pass right over here attack radius and layer mask. So let's also create a layer mask, basically which game object we want to target. So let's go to top of our class or right over here. Let's make a public uh, that will be layer mask, and we can call this one something like target layer. And as a target layer we're gonna choose player because we just only want to attack on player game object. So that's why we're gonna pass right over here attack layer, sorry, target layer, not attack radius, target layer. And make sure you just close that up with semicolon. So this function right over here gonna create a circle from center position with this much of radius, and it's just gonna target only our player game object. So this can be true or false depending upon if this player game object if this player game object really collide with that circle of this enemy game object, then this function right over here gonna give a true value, else it's gonna give a false value. So this will work like as collision. So we're gonna store the result. So let's create a collider 2D. Sorry, let's create a collider 2D, because this is will work like as a collider, and we can call something like hit equal to this. So this hit can be true or false depending upon, sir, if the sorry, we already have name hit, so I'm gonna call it something like hit info. So this hit info can be true or false depending upon if the circle is really colliding with the if the circle really colliding with this player game object or not. If it's, then this hit info just gonna be true, else it's gonna be false. So we're gonna check in the next line if hit info is equals to true. If that is the case, let's make some curly brackets. So basically means the player inside of that attack radius or that circle of this enemy game object. So what this enemy game object should do right now, it's just need to stop. Instead, this enemy game object now should attack on our player game object. So what we're gonna do, if it's attack true, then we will type something like, for now let's type debug.log something attack on player, attack on and top of that we're gonna add a custom message attack on. I just use a custom message in quotation, and top of that I'm gonna just print out the name, and we can extract info whatever we're gonna attack with. So by going over to this hit info parameter, we can extract info like name, tag, anything we can. So I'm gonna go over to hit info, then game object dot name. Basically the circle collided, so definitely the circle just gonna collide with this player game object. So basically we just moving over to this player game object, then accessing the name of this game object, which will be player we do know. So the message just gonna print out. But if the player is not inside of that circle, not inside of that circle, so what this enemy should do now, this enemy should just patrol around this ground. So that's why we're going to take all of this code, and all of this code is right over here, is responsible for moving our player game object left and right and patrolling around. So in that condition, basically we have to type, so else the circle not collided with player means player is pretty far away. So in that situation, enemy should now just patrol around that ground. So what that's why we're going to take whole line, basically this line of code, and then we're going to paste it over in else condition. Basically control X for cut and control V for paste. So in that situation, we just patrolling once the enemy is not too much close to our once the player is not too much close to our enemy game object, so we just patrolling. But once it's, then we just printing out the message in the console, says attack on and the name of the game object, which will be player. So attack on player message just gonna pop up in the console, but we're not gonna able to see that circle. To see that circle or to draw that circle, we need to use another function, and it's called on draw gizmo selected. Make sure you just type this. You can ignore this line of code. Instead you have to type this on draw gizmo selected. Make sure as I did right over here. So I'm gonna go bottom, and over here I'm gonna draw. To draw, we have to use this gizmos dot draw where sphere function, and this function as a first argument will take the position from where we want to draw. So we're going to use this transform dot position, basically means center position of our enemy game object, and the second thing, it will take the radius. I'm gonna pass this attack radius, and let's go. And what we want, I'm gonna choose a different color. To choose color, we have to use this gizmos dot color, and I'm gonna set equal to color dot something like red. It's totally up to you what color you want. And over here, as you can see, once the hit info is true, we're just printing out message. So what I want to do, I created this in range parameter, as you can see. So what I want, so this bool parameter can be true or false. So I want to set this in range parameter to true. Why? Because the circle or the player game object is now too much close to our enemy game object. So that's why I'm gonna set this in range parameter to true. And once the enemy is not too much far away, basically not colliding with that circle, then we're gonna set this in range parameter to false, because we're gonna use later in range parameter to do something. So that's why. So we're gonna go else condition, and we will set this to false in range because enemy is not too much close. And let's control s to save your code and go back to Unity. So we should able to see that in range parameter just gonna pop up underneath our enemy script. So first thing what we have to do, as a layer marks, we need to choose player. So before we do that, we need to assign our player as a player layer. As you can see, in range by default is false, basically unchecked, and attack radius we have chosen this 4, but we can just adjust it over here. I'm gonna go with 4, and target layer is says nothing. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna choose player. So before we choose player, we need to assign our player as a player layer. To do so, let's select this player game object, and if to focus on it, go over to inspector. In the top right you can see layer. So just click on that and click on add layer. Name the layer what you want. So I'm gonna call this one player. And now let's go to player game object one more time, and make sure you just select this player game object, over to inspector and layer as a layer default to choose player. Now we assign it this player as a player layer, and make sure you just go to overrides and click on apply all. And let's go to enemy game object now. As you can see, target layer says nothing, so let's just click on that. So I'm gonna choose player. Now this circle only gonna check for this player game object. So let's click on this play button and have a look. So this enrich parameter by default is false, but once we collide with that circle of that enemy game object, this is gonna be true. So just wait. So if we collide with that circle, as you can see, this in range just getting true. And if we select the console right over here, as you can see, attack on player message just getting pop up again and again, and the enemy just get stopped right there. Why? Because as you can see, we're not moving at all, we just printing out the message, and we setting in range parameter to true. So basically that's the thing happening. So I'm gonna get out of play mode. So what I'm gonna do, if I open up the enemies do script now, as you can see, we don't have anything in enemy 2 script, but it's working. Why? Because we inheriting from enemy class. So we just taking all of the properties of enemy class, even in range, all of those things. So what we want to do right over here, if we go to enemy script or enemy class, as you can see, and you just want to use this update function one more time, this start function, this all of this function, you just want to use one more time. So to use one more time, you have to mark as public, then virtual void. Make sure you just marking as public virtual void. Now I can use this function, this start function one more time. How? If we go to enemy to class, basically the inheriting class, if I just go right over there, we have to type this override, and the function I want to use this start. As you can see, we have to use this override void start function. Now I can use this start function one more time. And I also, you can use this update function, to use this update function one more time into that inheriting class. What we have to do, we have to mark this as a public virtual void. Now I can use this update function one more time to check. So let's go to enemy 2 class. To call that or to use that function, we have to type this override void, and the function is that update. As you can see, we using the update function one more time. And over here base dot update basically means whatever we like. So if we just remove this based or base dot update right over here, this line of code, if we go to enemy class, this line of code right over here not gonna call or not gonna execute or not gonna run. So that's why, and we want to run. Basically we want to patrol, we want to attack, we want to do all kind of things. So that's why with this we need this line of code. So that is the reason we're gonna go to this over here and we call base dot update. Base dot update, basically those line of code now gonna get called. And after that we can modify or we can add top of it anything we want to do. So we created a in range parameter. So we're gonna check if in range, okay, if in range is equals to true. So in that situation what we have to do, we need to stop running. Basically we have to stop running. So instead this enemy game object should just attack on this player game object. And if we select this enemy game object, we have a animator component as you can see, and I created those animation right over here. So if I just trigger this attack parameter to true, basically set this to true, it will play the attack animation clip right away. So that's why, so we need a reference of this animator component, then we can do the thing. So let's go to top of our class. And what we can do, we can remove this using Unity engine, right, this line of code, because we inheriting from this enemy class, and this enemy class already have this namespace using Unity engine as you can see. So that's why we don't need to use it one more time, so we can remove that. So over here, so we need a reference, so we're gonna use this public. Make sure you making it public. The component type is animator. Basically we already have a animator component reference. So if we go to anime script, as you can see, I guess we, okay, so we get a problem. The problem is that we need to include this using Unity engine. Make sure you just I really apologize for that, I just not using. So make sure you just use that Unity engine. So public, that is a animator component, and let's call this one something like animator. Basically we gonna take a reference of this animator component, and we're gonna set this attack parameter to true. And if we set that to true, and this enemy just gonna attack on our player game object right away. So that's why, so we're gonna go to in range. So we're checking right over here if in range parameter is equals to true. Basically means the circle or this player game object inside of this circle. So what this enemy game object should do now, it should play the attack animation clip. So that's why we're gonna go there, and over here we're gonna set animator. So we're gonna go to animator, that set bool function we have to use. Sorry, set bool. And in quotation, as a first argument in quotation, it's gonna take the parameter name. So the parameter name is attack as you can see. So we're gonna pass in quotation attack, and the second thing, it will take the value. So we're gonna pass true. And we don't know, if we set it to true, it will play the attack animation clip. And make sure close that up with semicolon. But if the player is not inside of this attack range of this enemy game object, so in that situation what this enemy game object should do, it just should play the work animation clip, and it just should play basically just gonna patrol around the ground. So that's why in else condition, else if the player game object inside of not inside of that circle, then we're gonna set this attack parameter to false. And if we set this one to false, basically it's just gonna play the work animation clip. So that's why we're gonna go over to animator, then set bool, and the function in quotation we're gonna say attack, and we will set the value to false. And we do know, if we set it to false, it will play the work animation clip. So make sure Control S to save your code, and let's go to Unity. And in enemy script, so enemy 2 we get not overrides. Okay, update function we just did make sure. So public virtual void update, and if we go to public override, so if we go to Unity and console, we getting an error that enemy dot start. Okay, so we can remove this. Basically we don't have any line of code. If we go to enemy class, we cannot see any line of code right over here, and we have nothing right over here. So that's why so we can remove this base dot start. Basically we have nothing to execute, so that's why we can remove this. But we need base dot update, because in update function we have lot of line of code, so that's why we just need to call this one. So make sure control S. Now let's go to Unity. So we should able to see that error just gonna go right away. So it's not going at all. So if we just double click on that, okay, so basically we can remove this start function, we don't need it. And we can just control S to save our code. Basically in our start function, okay, we get one more problem, is that update function. So if we go to enemy class public, so let's make it instead private void update. If we save it, so we getting a problem, says let's do public, sorry, control S to save your code. And okay, so basically we get the problem that we don't have a reference of this animator we just made it. So let's control S to save our code. Let's go to Unity. Now error should be gone by now, but the problem is that we getting an error. So enemy to not suitable, so we inheriting from update function we have. We can remove this, and if we save this one and let's go, and if we now move over to Unity, that error should be gone by now, because we haven't saved our uh, enemy class basically, or enemy script, and it should be gone by now. Okay, so actually the problem is that we need to go over to this enemy script or enemy class. We need to press down Control S. Why? Because we haven't set, and we just use this update function one more time. So that's why. So you can include the start function. So I'm gonna override the start functions. I'm really sorry. So we need to, okay, so we just remove, but you can do the same thing as we did with our update function. So that's why I'm gonna make this like this. Okay, so this is fine. Control S. Now let's go to Unity. So we should able to see, basically we just haven't saved that line of code. So make sure you just press down on your keyboard Control S to save. So as you can see in animator it says none. So what are we gonna do? We're gonna take this animator and let's drag it right there. Now we have animator reference. Now we can switch up the animation. So let's have a look. Let's click on this play button. We should hope that this anime just gonna play. So basically once we get inside of this attack range or attack radius of this enemy, we should able to see enemy just gonna play the attack animation. Indeed it just playing, and we just printing out the message attack on player. But once we get outside of this attack range, as you can see enemy just patrolling now, and once we get in, as you can see, I hope you get the idea that how you can just use inheritance to do something, and you can use a function multiple times if you want, basically more times if you want by overrides. I hope you get the idea of this. And lastly, thanks for watching this video.